Chairman O'Malley, tell us what's going on.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you very much and thank the Veterans for Peace for allowing me to participate in this discussion. I've tried to join the organization, but I can't locate my discharge papers, and so we've sent a request to them to get that information, but it's the Army, so they hurry up and wait. So I just wanted to appreciate again being here. Some of you may be familiar with the fact that on July 29th, 2022, the U.S. Government, in the form of the FBI, who came hard, full battle gear and what have you, attacked seven of locations of our homes, our offices in St. Petersburg, Florida, and in St. Louis, Missouri. And right now, I'm living in St. Louis, Missouri, and this was a pre-dawn raid that they initiated without any alert, without any warning or anything like that. And my wife and I happened to be up preparing for the day, and they came on with a loudspeaker out of the darkness, demanding anybody who was at this address to come out with our hands up and our hands empty. And my wife stayed behind while I went down first so that she could call people and let them know that we were being attacked. And they indicated this is the FBI. So when I got downstairs, I was greeted by an armored vehicle personnel carrier in front of my house and battle-geared military forces with assault weapons mounted with laser targeting devices that were hitting me in the chest. I mean, there's red dots all over my chest when I came downstairs. And my wife, when she came downstairs behind me, because she couldn't communicate with anybody because our phones had been jammed. And so when she came downstairs, she was nearly hit in the face with a drone that was sent up the stairs into our house. Flashbang grenades were going off at the same time. This was happening all around the neighborhood and actually in the back stairwell of our home. They had occupied the porch, the next door neighbor, and put tape over the doorbell video so nobody could see what it was they were doing. They had roped off an area in the community so that they could control anybody egress and exits from the immediate neighborhood. And I heard someone raised, I think it may have been Robert, the thing about this was like COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program, all over again. And of course, it bears striking similarities to that moment when the United States government attacked our movement and throughout this country in the 1960s. So when we get downstairs, they immediately take my cell phone, they take whatever materials I have and zip tie me behind my back. My wife, when she comes downstairs, they put handcuffs behind her back. And I'm asking, what is this? Why are we being attacked? And finally, one of them said, because there's a search warrant there is an indictment that's going to be released later this morning in Tampa, Florida, indicting Russian nationals, and your name is associated with that. And we are serving a search warrant. And I asked to see the search warrant that they were unable to produce at the moment, though they said there was someone had it in the area. You have to know that there were more than there were maybe 24 or more agents who had assaulted our home. And so I'm asking them, what's happening, and they're saying they've handcuffed me, and they're saying that I could sit on the curb. And they said my wife, she could sit on the curb while this is going on as well. And we refused to do that. And finally, I'm saying, well, can we leave? And they said, well, yeah, you can leave. So I said, well, that's what we want to do. So they tried cutting off. It took them a while to cut the zip ties off my wrists, and they took the handcuffs off my wife. So we got my vehicle, and we left, and we went by we have another office where comrades in the Solidarity Movement are located in the South St. Louis, which is where the majority of white people live in St. Louis. And when they came to where we are in North St. Louis, it's the most impoverished sector of the St. Louis population. So we traveled then to South St. Louis, where the Solidarity Organization is located. And when we get there, we see that the FBI agents are also there. And same thing with armored vehicles, camouflage uniforms, battle gear, and what have you. And they have done a similar thing there. They broke into the house. They knocked down all of the doors. They used battering rams, mechanical battering rams, to knock the doors down. They had broken the windows at my home as well. They occupied my home for hours, and then they went over. As I said, they were at the same time at the Solidarity Center. They used battering rams. They knocked down doors, broke windows, and things like that. And at the same time, they were over to the homes of Penny Hess and her housemate, also in South St. Louis, and they held them at gunpoint. And they did the same thing upstairs at the Solidarity Center, where Jesse Neville and his wife were living. And they went upstairs. They held them at gunpoint. They took all kinds of electronic devices. They took cell phones. They took laptops. They took all of these devices that we have. And that was in St. Louis. But we didn't know that at the same time they were raiding us in St. Petersburg, Florida. They went to my home in St. Petersburg, Florida, because that's where I grew up. That's where I've lived for much of my life. And although there was no one there, they broke down the door, one of the doors. They went into the home. They took electronic devices and what have you. They did the similar thing. They went to the home of one of the leaders, the young woman leader at our organization. They called and told her that the FBI, that someone was breaking into her car and that she needed to come out and investigate. When she came outside, FBI agents came from everywhere. They held her for a while there, given a similar treatment that they had given to us. And then we have a center in St. Petersburg, Florida, too, similar to what we have here in St. Louis. And they broke every door. They broke every door in that building. They went there. We had a radio station. They took the radio station temporarily off the air. They went upstairs and went to our archives, where 40, 50 years of archived materials from our organization and other things, events that were happening throughout the world located. They took some things from there. They took, again, our devices, our electronic devices, and what have you. All of this happened on the 29th. And while this happened on the 29th, we were later able to connect that with events that had preceded that. On July 2nd, there was someone with a military grade flamethrower in broad daylight had pulled up to our headquarters in St. Petersburg, Florida, and snatched and in broad daylight opened his trunk. And we know this is what happened because our security cameras caught it all. And then with that flamethrower, we have a 50-foot flagpole with with the 15 by 20-foot red, black, and green flag, African national flag there. He torched the flag. So this happened on July 2nd. And then on July 29th, they attacked us in these other places. So on September 22nd, we had petitions on change.org, where these were genocide petitions. We had people signing these petitions because we wanted to challenge the United States for violation of the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide as it related to the conditions of African people in this country. So what happened was that in September, 130,000 signatures on these petitions were taken down. In October, an activist and member of our organization was arrested while volunteering at our community garden here in St. Louis, where we feed people, and also this was we had done a Halloween event for the children there. He was held on bogus charges of making terroristic threats. He was held for 2 weeks before arraignment while being interrogated by FBI agents. On December 22nd, our movement received word that indictments were imminent and arrests were imminent of 4 of us who they had declared were unindicted co-conspirators. That was me, Penny Hess, who is the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, and Jesse Neville, who is the chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and Akili Nai, the woman whose home they went to in St. Petersburg, Florida. And so what happened then was that on January 7th, the church right across the street from my house, the same house that they had raided on July 29th, the church right across the street, immediately in front of the house that we had under contract to establish community programs, community development programs, this was mysteriously torched. I mean, it was torched. And it's still there today, empty because of the damage that was done there. It was extraordinary. And on February 8th, so that was February 8th, 2023, the FBI, we took the FBI before the St. Louis Board of Alders, trying to get them to pass a Dred Scott City of Refuge resolution that would prohibit the city government and city police with working with FBI agents or any federal organizations that were attacking people in the community trying to uplift the African community. In March, in February 14th, the Pinellas County, this is Pinellas County, Florida, the Board of Supervisors revoked funding for the radio station that was raided in St. Petersburg, Florida. They revoked funding, a grant that we had already won for several $1,000s for improving it so that we could do things with hurricanes and stay able to keep the community alerted and on top of situations, and also so that we can improve it because the station manager is blind. And so we wanted this to put materials in there that would make it easier, equipment, make it easier for him to carry out that job. So they revoked it on March. That was in February. On March 7th, we revealed this campaign of economic sanctions that were similar to those that's imposed on foreign countries that are not, and region banks closed the Uhuru-related accounts and credit lines and canceled a mortgage loan, forcing us to pay in something like 2 weeks, $80-some-odd thousand. I mean, we don't miss
economic payments. We don't delay on that. In most instances, we pay before the loans are due and what have you. This is something, we had a 20-year relationship with these people. Suddenly they shut it down and said that we had to pay off a mortgage in something like 2 weeks of $80,000. And the GoFundMe that people can use to raise money, it held over $9,000 in donations that were to come to the defense work of that we were doing. They held that until we got a lawyer involved to threaten them and what have you before they would turn that money over to us. And that was in March. In April, me, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville were indicted. So 9 months after the initial attack, we were indicted. And we were indicted for being Russian agents, working for a foreign government without registering with the Attorney General to let them know we were working for a foreign government. And then that was in April. On May 2nd, 2023, me, Penny Hess, reported for arraignment in Tampa, Florida, where we were put in handcuffs and leg irons, held for hours in a cell, and released on bail. Our passports were seized. And we are subject to unscheduled home checks from a court agent, required to get court permission to travel across state lines, to leave the jurisdiction. And on May 8th, Jesse Neville reported for arraignment and faced the same kind of treatment. In July, on July 17th, one of our attorneys, Leonard Goodman, filed a motion to dismiss. And all of this stuff that I'm telling you about, you can go to, and then we want you to look at the motions. We want you to look at the indictments, and we want you to be able to look at our response to the indictment. I think it's extremely important. You can do that by going to handsoffuhuru.org, UHURU, that's Uhuru, handsoffuhuru.org. On January 26th of this year, the federal magistrate judge rejected our motion to dismiss the charges. And then the trial date was set for September 3rd, 2024. And so we went to trial in September. And we were charged with two offenses. One of them was working for a foreign government, without prior registration to the Attorney General. And the other was conspiring to work for a foreign government without notifying the Attorney General. And we went to court, and during the trial, where we didn't present any witnesses, and the government didn't have any human witnesses, they had 14 persons, 12 of whom were FBI agents, and 2 were people that they paid as Russian experts to testify. And none of those who testified could claim that anything they said we did was true. In fact, they were asked quite pointedly because the so-called overt acts of this that we committed as agents of Russia included the filing, collecting the petitions on genocide, included traveling throughout the United States, working with the United Nations entities that were traveling the United States, checking on the conditions of African people here, and getting petitions signed, and speaking before the United Nations hearings in different places, in Jackson, Mississippi, Chicago, Illinois, and New York, etc. An overt act also included the fact that we ran 2 people for office in St. Petersburg, Florida, city council and mayor on reparations platform. And they said the Russians paid for that. And they said I went to Moscow twice in May and September of 2015, I think it was. And they said that that's where I became a Russian agent, because I went to Moscow. That was clear evidence. And I went to Moscow at the invitation of of a non-governmental organization in Russia. And this non-governmental organization was holding conferences, international conferences attended by different organizations, persons from around the world. And some of this had to do with dealing with the migrant issues, and had to deal with people who were struggling for self-determination, et cetera. And so this was a part of the evidence of my being a Russian agent and entering into a conspiracy with people in Moscow. And yet, and during the trial, where FBI agents were asked, because we were also charged with that election, we were saying we facilitated Russian interference into U.S. elections. And the lead investigator for the FBI was asked directly if, in fact, there was any evidence that we participated in any Russian interference in elections, and the person had to say no, that was not the case. And then asked, if you know that's not the case, you saw that in the indictment. Why didn't you say something or involve yourself in that? They were asked if point blank by one of the lawyers is on our opposition to the Ukraine war was another thing that was an overt act, and indicated that we were working for Russia because we declared then that the Russian the Ukraine issue was an instance where NATO and the United States were using Ukraine as fodder in an attack against Russia. That's something that's been going on for many years, and there are other professors and people who are quite familiar with this who would testify to the same thing. And so they said that was an indication that we were working for Russia as well. And I think that's all of what I'm talking about is of tremendous significance, because if in fact they could have convicted us for working for Russia based on our complaints about the conditions of African people in this country, it would have delegitimized any complaint, any criticism that Black people make of our treatment in this country, and it would make it something that it absolves the United States for any kind of problems that Black people have, and if we are complaining, then it's because Russia or some other foreign entity put us up to that. And when you look at it, you talk about this Ukraine war, where we see just a few days ago, this Ukrainian entity has utilized U.S. military, U.S. high long-range missiles that had to be something that was done with U.S. technology, U.S. training, and probably U.S. troops who made it happen, et cetera. This is what we're looking at, and it placed us, on the cusp of a possible, nuclear conflagration. And so they would shut us up from even talking about it, and saying that anybody who has this discussion has to be working for a foreign agent, has to be an agent of a foreign government, something to that effect. And so it's a very precarious and dangerous situation. So the jury, after listening to everything that the government brought, said that we were not guilty of being foreign agents. We were not guilty of being foreign agents of Russia. That's what they ruled. But they said we were guilty of conspiring to do something that never happened. So the foreign agent charge, if we had been guilty of that, if they had convicted us that, then we've been facing 10 years. With the conspiring to do what never happened is a verdict that's punishable up to 5 years in prison and $250,000 fine. So on December 16th, we'll be going to Tampa, Florida, to the federal court there for sentencing on that charge. And so we're looking at a possible 5-year prison sentence and a possible $250,000 fine for each of the three of us. That's more or less where we are with this. And I want to say that it's not like I've never had something to do with Russia or Russians, because I have. I was in Berlin in 1961 when the Berlin Wall was created. I was in the U.S. military at the time. I was in the 40th Armor, in a tank outfit that was the first instance of a U.S. military tank and Russian tanks confronting each other in military and combat mode. So I was there for that, and I was at Checkpoint Charlie. I was in all of those places throughout Berlin, Germany, where this stuff, where this was going on. I was so this whole thing about Russia. That was my first and initial contact with Russia. The first time I met anybody who was a Russian, and that was in the employ of the United States government. And that's the only time I've ever worked for a government. Was when I was working for the United States in that instance. And then, of course, I was in a military convoy after I got back to the United States on my way to, I was located in Fort Benning on my way to Patrick Air Force Base down near Cocoa Beach during the so-called Cuban Missile Crisis. I was in a convoy that was sent there to this base and to protect Americans, they said, from the horrible Cubans. And on the way there, to fight the horrible Cubans, we stopped in a place called Palaca, Florida, and to eat lunch. And when the people in the convoy got off to go eat lunch before on our way to fight the horrible Cubans, when we walked in, they told me, "We don't serve your kind." And my lieutenant said, "Well, don't worry about it. We'll bring you something out." This is my relationship with the Cubans, with the Russians, or anything that was associated with Russia. That's my history in terms of that's the first encounters I ever had. And I just wanted to say that, and I'm not saying this in a way that's hostile to Cuba or Russia. I was bamboozled about the Russia question, and I'll say that right up front. And I became quite clear how bamboozled I was when I did go to Moscow and when I did travel through Moscow, and what I saw there clearly was contradicted everything that I had been taught. And I was a relatively well-read person, and still had been bamboozled about what the reality of Russia was. And that's how effective it can be when the government doesn't want you to know something, doesn't want you to understand something, doesn't want you to learn something. And that's why they would attack me, and so that people can't hear what I have to say. And it's not just my right to speak that's under assault. It's the right and the ability of people to hear what I have to say. Not necessarily to agree with it, at least, but to have an informed opinion about what it is they agree, they disagree. So anyway, that's more or less the story. Uhuru. Thank you. I'm open to any kinds of questions. I'm hoping that we can win people to be there in Tampa, Florida, at that federal courthouse. They need to see some veterans there.
And that's December 16th, right?
December 16th, right.
Okay, so hopefully some of the veterans from Veterans for Peace in Florida, and maybe some that are commuting can get there. But Chairman, I had a question, and and everybody else, all you have to do is raise your hand and we'll open this up. But what is the purpose of your organization?
My organization is an anti-colonial organization. It's for self-determination for African people. It's fighting for the dignity that comes as a consequence of people being able to feed, clothe, and house themselves, as opposed to being on permanent welfare slaves and with all of those rights removed. There's no dignity in being a voluntary colonial subject. So it's part of a struggle of throughout the African world. We exist in the United States. We exist in various places on the continent of Africa itself. Many people will be surprised by what I'm saying, only because the United States government and the media have prevented people from hearing any opinion about Black people, other if it doesn't come from some tame organization or Obama or Kamala Harris or something to that effect. This is a historical I'm part of a historical trend in this in of the struggle of Black people, and we still are struggling seriously for the reunification of our continent, Africa, and the return of the resources and happiness that were lost as a consequence of this assault on Africa. That's not even, yeah. So that's what we're about, self-determination. Okay. And I wanted to say that you know, we fight around this whole question of democracy and democratic rights, and we don't do it as just something that's convenient for the moment. The fact is, when the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights were adopted by the United States Congress, when they were ratified in 1791, African people were property. And we had no Bill of Rights, we had no First Amendment, et cetera. So they were not there for us. And so who would fight harder for the right to free speech? And who would fight harder for the rights of freedom of association and assembly than somebody who doesn't have it and who could be killed easily for trying to do it? It was we, African people, have always been in the vanguard of this struggle for basic democratic rights. So I want to just say that and thank you. Excellent. I hope I gave some answer somewhat to the question that you just raised.
Yeah, I also, how many members do you have in the United States?
Well, you know, I quote Malcolm X on that: those who say don't know and those who know don't say. But, you know, we're a relatively small organization. And, yeah. I'll just leave it there. We're not a very large organization. We're a relatively small organization in terms of the size, because let me take that back. Our organization, I am the chair of the African People's Socialist Party. And the African People's Socialist Party exists in various places, countries around the world, including the United States. But the African People's Socialist Party is also the leader of what's characterized as the Uhuru movement. The Uhuru movement is something comprised of different kinds of organizations and who unite with the philosophy that I've just talked about, and who often work in the same strategic trajectory that the party has established. So the Uhuru movement is not just the membership of the party, and it's larger than the membership of the party. It's the African National Women's Organization. It's All African People's Development and Empowerment Project. It's the African People's Solidarity Committee. It is the African Uhuru Solidarity Movement. There are various facets of that that's much greater than the number of people who are in the party.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Well, it just seems to me that the response of the government was way over the top. I mean, you're facing
a life sentence.
Yeah, you're facing prison, and I'm not sure why. I mean, Veterans for Peace is an organization that doesn't have a whole lot good to say about capitalism. Doesn't have a whole lot good to say about militarism. Doesn't have a whole lot good to say about war. Will definitely speak out against NATO and what NATO did to aggravate Russia's attack on Ukraine. We've put out letters to call the Biden administration for the illegality in supporting Israel. How come we're not going to jail?
Don't speak so quickly.
I'm just
because what we've learned is that this one of the things so treacherous about the conspiracy charge is that it doesn't take you having done anything. You don't have to have done anything to be convicted of conspiracy. It's a thought crime. And so, I mean, this meeting could be characterized as a conspiracy by the government. It's a thought crime. Even to say, let's come together and be in Tampa on December 16th to support this case. it's a thought crime, and that's how dangerous and treacherous it is, and why people have to fight it. It's not just me and the Uhuru Three. It's the question is what kind of country we're going to live in, and how much we are willing to be on our bellies faced with this kind of tyranny. That's the question we are confronted with. You know, and somebody mentioned Scott Ritter before we got here, and then that was one of the things that Scott Ritter has been made aggravated about, and one of the reasons he's such a firm supporter of this case, this struggle that we're involved in as well.
Okay, is Scott Ritter going to be down there on December 16th?
Yeah, he plans to be there as well. He's been with us. He was just with us in Washington, D.C. In November at a conference that we did there, rally in March that we did there. So yeah, he's going to be there.
All right, and you've got a website that I've been perusing. Your organization is advocating for all kinds of freedom and all kinds of freedom of speech, and with different organizations. And I noticed that you had a segment about Leonard Peltier.
Yes.
So
yes, I mean you talk about a crime. I mean, Leonard Peltier's been in prison for almost 50 years. And people are talking about Gaza, which is horrible. And I can't say enough just how horrible Gaza is in Israel. But the Israelis learned from what happened to the indigenous people on this land. And so you talk about Gaza, you're talking about the concentration camps that are euphemistically referred to as Indian reservations in this country, and the people on their own land. And so Leonard Peltier stands up against an FBI assault on the territory, occupation on the territory, and he's been locked up for 50 years in prison. He's an old man now. I mean, and nobody even speaks about the indigenous people unless they're in the room. This is the kind of stuff we're talking about. This is the kind of discussion that we have to have, and this is one of the reasons the United States government would attack us, because we demand that these discussions be held, and that the people's right to live and dignity be respected.
good grief. So the Uhuru Three, that you're one of the three. Who are the
Yes.
other two? You might have mentioned them before, but I've been doing logistics. So who are the other two?
The other two are Penny Hess, who is, I think she's 78 years old, and she's
17.
been 78.
Okay.
78.
7-8.
Yeah, 78. And she's been involved in this movement for 40 some odd years, doing the same thing for 40 some odd years. She is the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee. The other is Jesse Neville, who is not quite as old, he's in his 30s. And he is the chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. He is someone who ran for office in St. Petersburg, Florida in 2017, for mayor in 2017, and I think in 2019. And is those candidacies, those electoral campaigns, etc., the United States government has declared that the Russians were responsible for that. The Russians were responsible for the reparations work we do. The Russians were responsible for every damn thing we've been doing for the last 50 years or more. That's what they claim. And so Jesse and Penny are facing the same sentences. All three of us, were found not guilty of being Russian agents. This is extraordinary. Not guilty of being Russian agents, but guilty of conspiring to do something that never happened, which is to be Russian agents.
My goodness. So, well, should we invite Penny and Jesse to jump on and say a few words? And just to make sure, if anybody wants a copy of this, I will send a copy to anybody who puts an email in the chat.
Splendid.
So,
Let's ask Jesse and Penny, if they would, yeah.
All right,
Yeah, Uhuru.
Penny, go
Uhuru,
ahead.
this is Penny, yes. Well, first of all, I really want to thank the Veterans for Peace for having us on and just for your courageous stands over so many years. And I do want to salute my leadership, Chairman Omali Shatella, and not only an incredible and courageous leader of the African liberation movement and is known and loved worldwide, but also maybe the original veteran for peace, who was, as he says, in Berlin in 1961, and just has always fought for, peace, dignity, and the right to a prosperous life for African people and oppressed and colonized peoples around the world. So I do want to, just reiterate what the chairman has said. This is a very, very serious precedent that the US government is doing, because this is the first time that these laws have ever been used for pure speech. And there is no speech that the Uhuru movement or Chairman Omali Yeshitela has ever given that is not protected speech, supposedly, under the First Amendment. It is nothing, there are violations of speech. That would mean you couldn't say that, but this is not what this is. This is completely protected speech. And there are no charges of violence. There's no mention and no experience of violence or theft or drugs or murder or, anything like that. This is just about our words. And it sets a precedent that now the US government can go after any other organization or individual that it wants to and have this precedent on their indictment, or however it goes, that they do that based on, versus Omali Yeshitela, US government versus Omali Yeshitela. And so I just think that we have to really understand the seriousness of this, and that I also would say, as the chairman has alluded to, that this is what the US government has done to the African liberation movement, the Black Power movement, the movement for African self-determination inside the US. And I'm talking about Black people inside the US and around the world in the 1960s. And somebody mentioned when we were just coming on COINTELPRO, which is known for having, using the FBI, even the CIA, the DEA to assassinate the leaders of the Black Power movement of the 1960s and so on. And this is a continuation of that kind of attack whenever African people are fighting for self-determination and power over their own hands. So, I just wanted to say that, and to say that the attack on Jesse and myself are part of the attack on the chairman, because what they want to do, and this is one of the, I think, goals or statements of COINTELPRO, is to isolate the Black liberation movement. So they want to scare off white solidarity with that. And, I will just also say that I am the chair, as the chairman said, of the African People's Solidarity Committee, which is a white organization under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. And we go into the white community and organize for reparations to African people and for genuine solidarity. And so, this attack says that it took the word reparations and said the Russians told the chairman to say this, when in fact the chairman organized the first tribunal on reparations to African people in 1982. So all of it is provable, but it is there to just try to muddy the waters and literally attempting to put the chairman and Jesse and myself in prison for this war of ideas, these ideas and words that are being put out. So I just wanted to say that, but we do want to call on everybody to be in Tampa on December 16th. Tell your friends, try to get in the car, jump in the car and come on down, because it is really important for the judge and the state to see the people that are standing with Chairman Omali Yeshitela and what we call anti-colonial free speech. A lot of people came out to the trial in September, and that was very, very important. So just making the call for people in any way you can, get to Tampa December 16th. It will be very, very urgent and important for you to take that stand, and really appreciate it, Uhuru.
Thanks, Penny. And for anybody, all you have to do to raise your hand, you go down to the stuff, the little icons on the button on the bottom, or maybe it's on the side, or maybe it's on the top. I don't know. I'm a boomer. So you just click on reactions and there's a hand. So let's
And I
let
also
Jesse
just want
talk
to
and
say,
then,
I hope Jesse can say a few words as well.
yeah, Jesse's going to talk and then Rudyard, he will ask a question. So Jesse, go ahead. What do you have to add?
Uhuru, thank you so much, Jim, and everybody who's here. I'm really proud and honored to be in attendance for this meeting of the Southern Region of Veterans for Peace, and I want to join Chairwoman Penny in just saluting our leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and just appreciate the very detailed breakdown that you gave, Chairman, of this whole attack, the full scope of this attack, and who the party is and what this represents, and the fact that, as you said, who else but African people would be at the front lines, the vanguard of the struggle for free speech and democratic rights, but African people who did not have those rights under U.S. colonial law to begin with. So I think that's really the key question. And I just appreciate everything Chairwoman Penny said as well. And I just wanted to appreciate, again, Veterans for Peace, and specifically shout out Josh Shirley in Fresno, California, who's on, who we worked very closely with. Josh came to our USM, Uhuru Solidarity Movement National Convention. I think that was earlier this year, and spoke on behalf of Veterans for Peace. We also have had a really important relationship with the Veterans for Peace here in St. Louis, including Bob Suberi and others. We co-sponsored a vigil for the heroic martyrdom and the stance of Aaron Bushnell, who took his life in a courageous act of protest to the US-backed colonial genocide in Gaza, and whose final words echoed decades of work by the African People's Socialist Party and the African People's Solidarity Committee, when he said, "No more genocide in our name. I will no longer be complicit in genocide." And that is essentially the stance that the APSC and Uhuru Solidarity Movement were created to express in the white community and to build a movement around within the white community. And I also appreciate that, what Penny said about the chairman as the original veteran for peace, and also mentioning the 1982 Tribunal on Reparations, where the chairman set about to make reparations a household word. And it reminded me of the fact that just in reading about that tribunal, that one of the speakers was Job Mashariki, who was the president of Black Veterans for Social Justice, and who talked about the fact that it was really African people in the United States who kicked off the anti-war movement. And, as the chairman has said, have always been the most consistent opponents to U.S. wars of imperialism and occupation, including the war against African people inside this country and the war against indigenous and Mexican people inside this country. So yeah, I just wanted to say those things, and just, want to unite with the call for everybody who possibly can to be with us in Tampa, Florida on December 16th for the sentencing hearing. The U.S. government, as we've said, has made it clear their intention is not to hold back at all. They want to put Chairman Omali Yeshitela, first and foremost, and the Uhuru Three in federal prison for up to 5 years, and impose this fine of up to $225,000 on each of the Uhuru Three. It has no basis in law. It has nothing to do with so-called criminality or evidence or anything like that. It is a complete political attack on African people, on the right of African people to have freedom of speech, to have their own voice, to have their own agency, and by extension, it's an attack on freedom of speech, period. Freedom of speech for everyone. And as Penny mentioned, this law that they used, 951, this foreign agents law, it's a political law. This is the first time they've ever used it to target pure speech. So the precedent has already been set by the fact that it even went to trial. But the party and the Hands Off Uhuru movement and the leadership of the chairman frustrated their political mission by beating the main charge, the foreign agent charge, taking away from them their political goal of using the law to discredit criticism by African people of their treatment at the hands of the US government. And all they were left with was this bogus, illogical, nonsensical, incoherent, mixed verdict where, as the chairman said, we were found not guilty of being foreign agents, but somehow convicted of conspiring to be foreign agents. So we will be appealing this conviction, and we're confident that we will be able to fight it to the bitter end and get this conviction overturned. But the key thing that the chairman has really fought for us to understand is that the people are everything. And the only thing that has ever forced the US government and its legal institutions to operate differently from the way they want to operate is when the people mobilize, when there's movement of the masses of the people under the leadership of African and colonized people. And that's what December 16th is about. So I'll just say in closing that one thing I think is really important about the indictment against the chairman and the Uhuru Three is that, as Penny said, it was an attack on freedom of speech and positions that the party has taken throughout its entire history. One of the things that they claimed was the product of Russian control or influence was the fact that the chairman spoke out. He was the first to speak out against the US role in fomenting the Ukraine-Russia war in February of 2022. But part of the evidence that was presented in trial were burning spear newspapers going back to the late 1960s, showing that Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the Uhuru movement have opposed every single US imperialist war that has taken place during the lifespan of the African People's Socialist Party. The chairman has always stood on the side of all oppressed and colonized peoples around the world. And when they attack the chairman and the right to free speech for African people, when they attack our right to free speech as white people who stand in solidarity, they're attacking your right to do what you do as Veterans for Peace, to say no more wars, no more genocide in our name, no more colonialism, and in our name for our benefit or period. And that we have a right to stand in solidarity with African people and by extension with Iraqi, Afghan, Palestinian, indigenous, and all oppressed and colonized peoples. So I'll leave it at that and just want to again thank Veterans for Peace. Thank you, Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Chairwoman Penny. I'm very proud to be one of the Uhuru Three, and I will be very happy to see everybody there in December 16th when we secure another victory in that sentencing hearing and walk out of that courthouse without seeing a single day in prison. So we need everybody to be there. Handsoffuhuru.org is where you can go to sign up. Uhuru.
Roger.
Comment. Yeah, it's really important to know this is Veterans for Peace. We've created an organization called Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations. And W.E.B. Du Bois, one of the founders of the NAACP, was tried in 1951 or 52 for calling for peace, because he called for peace and the Soviet Union called for peace. And so that made him an agent of the Soviet Union. This is what we're dealing with. I mean, he was able to beat the case, but this is the treachery that we're looking at.
Good grief. Rudyard.
Yes, could you please explain what conspiring to be a foreign agent means in more detail? I'm very foggy on what that charge entails, the so-called proof they're trying to present. I appreciate any insight on that. Thank you. Wonderful talk.
Thank you. Justin may want to talk about that. He's the guy who does a lot of the legal stuff with the lawyers and otherwise. But part of what has happened is that we never said that we didn't go to Moscow. We've always said that we've worked for the history of our movement to try to break out of this encirclement of our movement, that the government and majority of white people who were informed got their opinions from CNN, well, the New York Times and the local ruling class media don't know a damn thing about our movement except what they are fed. And so we've tried to win friends everywhere to tell them about our movement and to win support outside of the African community. That's been a strategic goal of our movement forever. That's one of the reasons there's an African People Solidarity Committee and Uhuru Solidarity Movement, because that's one of the reasons I went on Tucker Carlson's show to speak. That's one of the reasons that Scott Ritter is so important, because we want to talk to the people. We believe that if we talk to people, people get an opportunity to hear us, then they would come up with completely different views than what is offered them by tame groups of personalities that's created or promoted by the United States government and that media. So the fact that we said, yes, we went to Moscow, and our intention going to Moscow was to win support from everybody who was there. There were people from various countries who attended these conferences in Moscow, and we wanted everybody to know what the situation with African people is in this country and to win solidarity from them. And so what the government did, and it came up with the obvious assistance with the court itself, with a definition of conspiracy that said something to the effect that anyone who we work with, or they use really vague and a kind of terminology that would trick and confuse jurors. And then on top of that, what they did was they introduced to this discussion, to this trial, something about doxing. That seems to give the jury the impression that we represented a threat to the jurors themselves, because we had some plan, some plot to get in, to attack, in various ways, cops and judges and etc. So that even led the jurors to ask that their names not be published. And the court went along with that, despite arguments by our lawyers that we had to be treated just like every other case, etc. But Jesse might want to say more about the conspiracy charge.
Chairman.
Yeah.
I appreciate, the response that you just gave. And I think, the conspiracy conviction, one of the things we've said is that if you find it confusing, it means you're hearing it correctly. It's not that you're not understanding if you're confused by the verdict, because, we sat there when the verdict was announced. This is literally what the judge said. He said, count one, conspiracy to act as agents of a foreign government without notifying the Attorney General's office. Not guilty. Count two, conspiracy to act as agents of a foreign government without notifying the Attorney General's office. Guilty. So it was perplexing, but I think, as the chairman explains, it's perplexing if you try to understand it through a legalistic lens. It makes sense if you understand, again, if you remember that the whole thing is using the law to make a political attack on the African liberation movement. And basically what happened was the main charge, or what they call the substantive charge, which was the charge that the Uhuru Three and the chairman were working as Russian agents without notifying the Attorney General. That was the main charge. That had a 10-year prison sentence associated with it. And that charge required that the jury was convinced that Chairman Omali Yeshitela agreed to operate under the direction or control of the Russian government. That obviously is not true and is an insult to the independence and voice and self-determination and intelligence of African people and of the chairman to say that he would be taking orders from Russia when fighting for the liberation of African people. The jury could see that. That argument was thoroughly dismantled over the course of the trial. But what they do is they use this conspiracy law, which has actually been referred to by one organization as the prosecutor's darling or the prosecutor's dream, because it's basically a law they use when they don't have any other evidence. They can find you guilty, they can indict you and convict you of conspiracy to do something, even if they have not proven that you actually did it. As long as they can convince a jury that you agreed to do it with one other person, which in this case, not even that took place. So they use this conspiracy law. It is, like the chairman said, a thought crime. And the prosecutors lied to the jury and misled the jury and gave incredibly confusing jury instructions that even the lawyers in the room found confusing, that misled the jury to believe that a partnership between the African People's Socialist Party and a Russian NGO was the same as a conspiracy. We were saying all along that there was a partnership. It was a partnership on the terms set by Chairman Omali Yeshitela with the goal to advance the agenda of promoting African liberation on the world stage. So the prosecutors told the jury that is the same thing as a conspiracy, which is not true. A conspiracy, according to their law, is an agreement to commit a crime. In this case, the crime they said we were agreeing to commit was working as Russian agents, the same thing the jury said we did not do. So it's a completely, again, inconsistent, ridiculous verdict. And it's unprecedented, actually. I've been trying to research other cases where somebody has been found guilty of conspiring to be a foreign agent, but not guilty of being a foreign agent. I don't think it's ever happened. So it's something that, further exposes, the naked political nature of this attack. And it's really important that, it continues to be exposed, and that again, we do everything we can to have people there on December 16th to push back against this. Uhuru.
Ron Betag.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, there's a little bit of an echo, but let's see how it goes.
No. Hang on. I think I'm on twice. That's the problem. I'm working a new computer. Let me correct that and I'll be back.
Okay. Regina Sneed.
Yeah, hi there. Two questions. What's the judge's name so I can look up the record? And will this, is there a possibility that this sentencing hearing can be available online? We have had success in having that in certain demonstrators' cases. And has any such request been made of the court?
Well, the judge's name is William Jung, Jung, from the Middle District of Florida. And I haven't heard anything about, maybe Jesse could answer this, or Chairman. I haven't heard anything about it being online. And I mean, it's going to be in person.
I know, but I have attended other sentencing hearings of demonstrators online. It's something that could be, maybe we need to be requesting that.
Let's find out.
Check it out with the lawyer representing you guys.
I think that's not true in a federal court. In the federal court, you can't have cameras,
right,
recording devices, or anything like that.
Well, I've listened to hearings on cases that are being heard in federal district court here in San Francisco online. So it's possible it might be up to the judge whether they want to conduct it. Of course, this was also during COVID, so the rules may have changed recently, and I don't know. It's been more than 6 months since I've been on a hearing online. So it could possibly be that the rules have now changed because COVID is sort of over. But it's worthwhile checking.
Yeah.
If some
Yep.
public cry for such a thing to happen, it certainly isn't. But I would check that out with your lawyers. That's a strategic thing, and it's only 2 weeks, so it may not be the right call.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Ron, are you back on? Do you still have the question? Okay. All right. Well, we'll give Ron a minute or so. And for those, if you want a copy, I'm going to, oh, here comes Ron.
There is going to be a reenactment. We're doing reenactments of the trial using the transcripts from the trial. And we've done one already. So we want everybody to have access to that. You can hear the testimony being given by FBI agents. You can hear the cross-examinations of that. And so that's something we've done one, and I think there are two others ahead. So please check that out. Go to handsoffuhuru.org and check that out. And I just wanted to say that this is not a local trial, a local case, a local sentence. And I'm hoping that people can get to Tampa, Florida, no matter where you live, to get there. I mean, the judge, the court needs to see you. We've already supplied more than 1,600 letters to the judge with opinions from people about the character of those of us who have been found guilty and who will be sentenced on December 16th.
Okay. Ron, Ron's back. Oh,
Oh,
Yeah, is
Jim?
that better?
Ron, how has
Yeah,
it
Jim,
sounded?
can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yep.
Okay. Just going, I don't know, I got off. Anyway, I can't get my picture up either. It's just a problem with the computer. On the operative nature of this conspiracy, it actually, a charge of agent for a foreign power kicks in an executive order. I think the number is 22333, which means anything, you're now liable for the government. They're free to do anything, whatever, against you. So you come under a category that anything goes. And it's interesting you asked about another case. The LaRouche case was such in that Henry Kissinger claimed that LaRouche was an agent of foreign power, is getting money from the Russians, had to be. Anyway, it went to trial. And again, in these kinds of blocking and running the entire court case and what was allowed to be put in as evidence and whatever, the charge that LaRouche went to jail for, was sentenced for 15 years, he served 5, was conspiring to confuse the IRS. Now, there never was a case, there wasn't anything, there was no money involved, but the conspiracy held that he was conspiring to do it. And so anyway, I just bring that case up because the operative here is that clause that kicks in this condition where they can use anything to break you as a voice. And it ties now much more, in LaRouche's case as well, the media interface with this, the banking interface, the moves for bankruptcy, all this. And anyway, I just wanted to make that point. That's a case you might look at. There's a whole book out on it called Railroad. And then I'll put in a chat a link to an international conference that's coming up on Zoom December 7th and 8th on this question of creating an entire new strategic security and development architecture where we get outside this colonial control by these empire networks. But I put my name in the chat. I'd like the record here, but I'd also put in a link to this, it's just the schillerinstitute.com. You can get that, but I'll put it in the chat as well. But check out that particular clause that kicks in these executive orders.
All right. Thanks, Ron. Jesse.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I want to appreciate that. This is really quick. I got a text message from that was relayed by Patrick McCann. I know he wasn't able to make it on, but he wanted to make sure that we knew that he was planning to make a donation to the Hands Off Uhuru Legal Defense Fund, and to encourage others to do that if you can. So I just want to appreciate Patrick McCann for that, and anybody who is able to contribute to the Hands Off Uhuru Legal Defense Fund, which continues to raise funds for the appeal process and other legal and organizational needs. It's handsoffuhuru.org/donate.
Okay, so it's handsoffuhuru.org/donate.
/donate.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for that. And I've seen some others in the chat who are interested in making contributions to our legal defense fund as well, which is very much appreciated, and all of you appreciate it. I just want to say also that I've seen in the chat a couple of people one person referring to Leonard Peltier's case, which the chairman talked about, and somebody else talking about Geronimo Pratt, who was, I think, was it 37 years in prison, and so many, Matulu Shakur and so many other, Sundiata Acoli, so many other African freedom fighters who have been in prison, like Leonard Peltier, 50 years, 45 years, that this is such an important struggle. And as has been said, only the support from the people can push this back. So, we very much appreciate the support that you've shown for the chairman and for the Uhuru Three. And I see that some people are interested in coming and, to Tampa on December 16th. Go to handsoffuhuru.org. Everything is there. Everything is there on how to do that, how to sign up, where it is. I can't remember. Maybe Jesse knows the address of the courthouse, but it's all there on handsoffuhuru.org. It tells you, it's a very good, very up-to-date website. It has everything that you need to know, including, as some people have asked for, great interviews and articles and everything that's come out. All the webinars by the chairman, Omali Shatella, and the Uhuru Three have done over the last 2.5 years. So it's a treasure trove of information and also political analysis about the seriousness of this case and why we must take it on. There's hundreds of organizations who have joined in with Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition to stand with the Uhuru Three and with Chairman Omali Shatella. So, just really want to salute you for being here. It's so important. It really means a lot, and we are winning. Uhuru.
Nice. And maybe, let's see. No, and maybe Josh Shirley, the Vice President of Veterans for Peace, might be able to include Veterans for Peace in one of the organizations. What do you think, Josh?
And then, yeah, I was thinking that Veterans for Peace already was, but that would be great if not. Yeah, that would be really powerful.
Okay.
Well, Veterans for Peace have been on the ground, certainly here in St. Louis,
Yes.
just in a really powerful way from the very beginning. And we can't overstate the significance of that. And we really appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay.
Very important.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Josh, go ahead.
All right. I don't know if it's just me, but your audio is coming in real faint there, Jim, all of a sudden. I don't know if anybody else is catching that. But no, I just want to say that, thanks it's a real honor to be here, with sharing this space and this time with you all. Thank you to the Uhuru Three, and thanks for organizing this, Jim, and Patrick as well. I guess I just wanted to make, I don't know, a comment and maybe a couple of questions that I have. I probably have a long list of questions I'd like to get answered, but I know time is running short. I want to say one thing, which is a number of months ago, you mentioned Scott Ritter. In a very similar circumstance happened with Scott Ritter, as I understand it, right, where he was sort of, visited by the friendly FBI, who, under a very similar set of events. Only, as I recall, the the treatment that Scott Ritter got from the FBI was markedly different than the treatment that you all got, right?
Yeah.
And I just want to say, otherwise, it seems like very similar, but the treatment was very, very different. And I don't know, we could all just imagine what that's all about, but interesting, not that anybody deserves any of this, but yeah. And then if I have a question, I guess it would be, I don't know if this is something you can answer, if you've been, if your legal team is talking to you about this, but when you do show up on the 16th, do you have a reasonably, what can you reasonably expect in terms of what's going to be the next step? I mean, is there an appeals process that you think will kick in right away, or is there a possibility that you'd be going right into custody? Or, I'm just curious if you had any type of warning about that. And then I'll just leave it there, and then I might have another question or two, but I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
I think that I think we have no alternative but to, first of all, to say that part of what will happen is dependent upon you. The 1,600 letters that people sent, the clear demonstration of support that people have made, making it clear that the majority of the people, much greater number than the 12 people who were on that jury, disagree with this. We think that it's important for us to remember that it's a political charge and a political trial. And that says something about the centrality of the people. That's the determining factor, we believe. As it is, we expect the U.S. The court to do the maximum damage, and actually, am I going to prison? Perhaps right on the spot, even though it would, even though I think often the court gives people an opportunity to get affairs in order and turn yourself into the prison itself. But the way things have been moving with this case all along, the completely fabricated charges, and the thing that helps us to see clearly that it has nothing to do with the law and everything to do with politics. The banks, how the banks have moved against us, how they're burning churches, burning flags, arresting other people. They actually put up a $10 million bounty for anybody who would come out and testify against us. And even with that, they couldn't produce a single snitch, a single worm that would come and even lie for them in the courtroom. And I think that our security is dependent upon a demonstrable opposition to what this court is doing, and demonstrable support for this case. And Jessica can say other things about at the trial and if, what legally what we are, how we intend to be moving.
And we've got 5 minutes.
Right, Chairman, I don't really have anything to add. I think you covered it.
Well, part of what it is that if we are after sentencing, there's an intent to file a motion to appeal.
Right. Yeah.
And with that, an intent to file for bond, appeal bond. Yeah. So that's how we intend it. But that, of course, the judge will have to agree to both of those things.
Well, with that, good night.
Good night, Uhuru. Thank you so much.
Uhuru, thank you.
All right.